He came out to Austin and visited, and she was like, got it. I see. And so we started kind of looking around for houses, and we're like, well, let's give it a shot. You know, we weren't pregnant at the time.
Yeah.
And we kind of got married, and we were like, well, and we started finding that we were spending, if I had a weekend off of Supernatural, we'd be spending more and more time in Austin as opposed to Los Angeles. At the time, we still had our house in Los Angeles. And I remember, like, for years, I would show back up from the weekend, even though I was flying. There's no easy way to get to Austin from Vancouver. You're flying through Seattle in the middle of the night, or you're flying through Dallas or Phoenix or Chicago. I think one time I actually flew to New York on an overnight to take the first flight. I mean, it's bizarre. Yeah. It's hard to get to from Vancouver. Difficult to get to from Vancouver. But I would show up after like hellish travel, and I'd be like tanned and rested and relaxed. And I'd see Ackles. He'd be like, man, you look good. And he'd look all stressed. I'd be like, yeah, dude, like you got to get back to Texas, brother, because he's from Dallas.
Right.
And I think after, 4 or 5 years of telling him he should move to Austin, one summer he and Daniil flew out here and bought a place in Austin.
That's awesome.
I know.
It's a cool spot. It's for certain types of people. Again, I don't blame anybody. I don't fault anybody for loving Los Angeles. I don't fault anybody for loving New York or wherever it is you're from or whatever place you love. But you find a place that speaks to you for some reason. Either you have close friends and family there, or you like the food or the lifestyle or whatever, the terrain. That just happened to be Austin for me, and luckily Jen felt the same way. Otherwise, I don't know where we.
I remember going into Whole Foods the first time, and I thought every dude working in here looks like me. They all have like awesome beards.
Jet blends in really well.
I was like, I'm just missing the tattoos. I'm gonna have to get. I'm gonna get my
You
first
gotta
tattoo.
man up and get a tattoo. I've been trying to get him tattooed.
I don't like needles.
Yeah.
Of any kind.
Yeah.
I have.
That's
I mean,
fair.
if I get a shot, I'm like nervous about it. Like I get anxiety
make you sad.
bad.
You'd be a terrible heroin addict.
Yeah, it's terrible. Couldn't do it. You'll never see me do it. No.
No,
But I do. I love tats, and I want to get one.
I like tats too. I don't
I
have
feel
one
like
either.
if I wasn't in this business, I feel like I'd have a dozen.
Yeah.
I still will. I have vivid memories of seeing people next to me who have tattoos in the makeup chair. I'll get into hair and makeup and I'll kind of be groggy and look to memorize my lines, and I'll look over and someone will be getting like a tattoo covered.
Right.
And they get it covered wonderfully, but it's like an extra hour or something to blend it in, to darken the edges where it's too light and lighten the edges where it's too dark. And I'm like, man, if I had to give away an extra hour of my day every single day, it takes 8 days to film an episode. We do 23 a year. So that's 184 hours of my life I could be spending doing something else as opposed to just in the chair.
You just need one low back.
Yeah.
Tramp
my
stamp.
tramp
Cover
stamp.
that, yes.
It's going to just, just right on
I'm
the
sure
butt
Jen
cheek.
will like that.
Right on the butt cheek.
We have a friend who has one on her butt cheek. She got it for her anniversary. She got his name tattooed on her
As
butt
an
cheek.
anniversary present.
I'm not
going to
say the name, but yes, it was pretty funny.
We, that's amazing. Jensen and I and Jen were out with some buddies, and they run a company called The Chive, which we love. And it was one of those nights where I think wine poured too freely. I think we had started the night with a cocktail. We were out to dinner, and I was getting a little goofy. And I was like, that's it. Made the decision. Tattoos tonight. And Leo was laughing so hard that he ended up making it into a t-shirt about The Chive, tattoos tonight. So he sent a text to me and Jensen, and he's like, all right, who do I owe a thank you for this? And I was like, I gotta admit, that was me, man. Like I was all about tattoos tonight. And so he sent
Referral
me
fee. Send him our
yeah.
commission.
He's sending me a t-shirt, tattoos tonight.
You had a good idea the other night. You were talking about doing no regrets.
No regrets.
On
No
purpose.
regrets.
Yeah.
Like,
doing it on
that
purpose.
would be funny.
Yeah. That's
Yes.
funny is that night I was talking about doing a no regrets tattoo. I think I've seen it somewhere. I think it's on a commercial or
Yeah, it's a commercial, yeah.
I want the Silence of the Lambs. I had a buddy who has a buddy that got the bad guy in Silence of the Lambs. You know how
Buffalo
he has
Bill?
Buffalo Bill has that little tattoo where it's like a cut on his ribs and like blood coming down. So a guy got that.
That's
No way.
weird.
I saw funny. Jen and I were one of our first summers together. We road tripped from Los Angeles to San Antonio to see my family. I think for her to meet my family, as a matter of fact. And we went through Albuquerque and then through Amarillo. And I was going to do that food challenge, that big Texan 72-ounce steak. But I think I probably could have done it at the time. But we've been driving all day. I've been eating like Doritos and beef jerky. So I was just like a sodium walking piece of salt.
That's
and
me
so
every
I was
day.
full. I know. I didn't try it. Anyways, we were in some town. It started with an F. It was on, I think it's I-40, the one that goes from L.A. through Albuquerque, because we went to go visit some of her buddies in Albuquerque that she had worked with. I forget the name of the town. Anyways, we went to the hotel bar. You know, it was like a little motel. In the motel, you know, kind of watering hole. We're like, come on, let's do it.
Yeah.
And so we went over, and it was probably the crowd you'd imagine. You know, a lot of truckers.
Yeah.
Kind of the middle of nowhere, and a few people that were probably using fake IDs. And one of the guys, I think, knew Supernatural, and he kind of came up, and we're chatting, and I don't know how we got on the subject of tattoos, but he lifted his shirt up and showed us a tattoo. He had a surgery. From what I remember, it was the same thing, kind of on his ribs, but he had a big scar, and he had turned it into a zipper. So he had turned, he had turned it into a zipper.
That's crazy.
Maybe it was on his chest. It was somewhere on his torso. But it was maybe a 4 or 5 inch scar, and he had turned it into a zipper. And then there was like the little zipper handle or whatever you call it at the very bottom. He's like, look, check it out. I was like, I love it.
Here's my next question: has a fan, showed you a tattoo of your face or anything like super weird?
Yes. We've had a few face, a few signatures, a few always keep fighting, which I wouldn't mind tattooing myself.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah.
And for me, it's never like their one tattoo. You know, there's like, hey, I really love. When I was a kid, you know, I grew up in San Antonio. Kind of, I say it's a small town. It's not. It's a huge city, but we grew up in a suburb. You know, like we didn't really. It wasn't like I was going downtown San Antonio and getting a lot of culture, because there's a great culture scene down there, and so it felt like I didn't have a lot of friends with tattoos or whose parents had tattoos.
I didn't either.
It was pretty kind of whitewashed, and it was all kind of middle class, and so I didn't know what to think of them. The older I grow, I dig it, man. I dig people being passionate about something and making a commitment to it. And we've had a few really cool, so Sam and Dean Winchester have these tattoos that are kind of demon warding, on their chests. And I've seen a fair amount of those, and I dig it. And a matter of fact, one time a guy came up and he had the tattoo. He had never seen the show. He had just seen the symbol.
And he liked it?
And he found out what it meant. Like, it's an anti-possession tattoo. Right. And he's like, I like the idea. Like, to me, it stands for, like, I am myself, and no one's going to influence me. Right. Yeah. I'm not going to let the devil get into my heart. And like, he was like, but I think his buddy had been like, hey, that's the guy from the show where that symbol comes from. And he's like, all right, I guess I got to go say something.
That's awesome.
And one time, the first time I ever saw it, I think the first time that I can recall, I could be incorrect. Jen and I were on a plane to our honeymoon, and again, the guy who was one of the guys who was one of the flight attendants, who had been really normal. I think he had kind of casually mentioned, like, "Oh, hey guys, I like y'all's show." Yeah. Like, "Oh, thank you so much. We're on our honeymoon." This and that. He's like, "Oh, well, very awesome. Like, I hope it's cool." And then I think halfway through the flight, or maybe at the end of the flight, he's like, "By the way, I want to show you something." And he kind of undid his little outfit and showed, and he had the tattoo. Yeah, I would have never guessed. It was just like, that's cool. I think the same thing. He might have been one of the first ones. I think he was Tahitian, and he was like, I just like what it stands for, like anti-possession, however you think of possession, whether you believe in angels and demons or not. Yeah.
Or the worst one I've seen as far as my family, I don't think I've ever seen one of me, obviously, but
I've never showed you my tattoo.
Is we were at an
Jeppy
event,
tattoos.
And some lady walks up, and I believe it was on her calf. She had a caricature of my Uncle Si. And I was like, which he is not the most handsome man.
Well, he's already kind of a caricature.
Exactly. But we all saw that, and we were like, and it was funny because me and my brothers, we were like, that was a mistake.
Yeah. Talk about regrets.
I think he had like a tea glass. Like it was like a tea glass in his face.
It's going to say, okay, only one regret with an arrow pointing to the tattoo.
We laughed about that.
Maybe it started out as like a tattoo of you and it went wrong or something. They're like, well, just make it into Uncle Si, I guess.
Another funny thing I saw at an event like that was this lady came up and we were signing, stuff, and I was sitting right by my dad, and this lady reached in her bag and pulled out like some very scantily underwear. And she was like, Mr. Phil, would you please sign these for me? And she was like trying to hand them to him, and he was just looking at them. He said, ma'am, I don't know where you've been. There could be some microbes, and his exact words were, there could be some microbes on them.
Microbes? Is that even a word?
I'm not going to sign them. Sorry. And she was so embarrassed, but he was just
who
like,
would do that? Who would like hand somebody their panties to like sign?
Well,
I know you've gotten enough of them, but I'm saying the girl, the quality of the like, who is this person who's like, I'm gonna bring a pair of.
And from what I remember, she was
maybe it's for a reaction too, you know?
Yeah, I mean, she was kind of nice.
Is it a proposition? Is it a proposition?
On the side of the road, you know.
Let me just take these off real quick.
Yeah, that'd be a little strange. Give me a second. I forgot to bring something to sign here. Sign these. Yeah, that'd be a luncheon.
So gross.
Oh my gosh.
Microbes. I'm gonna borrow that word.
Yes.
But yeah, I do. I am a tattoo fan.
Yeah.
I dig it. Every now and again, I have like a thought of like, I don't know if I don't know the same thing. But
does Jen have one
of these days?
I haven't asked.
She did. She's had a couple, and you know what's funny is she had ones that I really loved, and she did too. She had hollow stars on her wrists, which what's funny is that, and when we had met, I'd always wanted a hollow star for the state of Texas underneath one of my arms, like underneath a bicep or something, that wouldn't have to get covered all the time. Mm-hmm. She had them on her wrist, and I think she said she saw a picture of her, you know, much more than I ever will, what kind of a woman goes through when becoming a mother. Anyways, long story short, I think she saw a picture of her holding Tom when he was like first born. And for some reason, like that star on her wrist was like a flashing light. And she was like, oh my God. And because I think she had got him when she was young.
Yeah.
Right.
Whatever. And she was like, and so she went and got them removed. And funny enough, now she's like, I should have never gotten those removed. I might get them back. I'm like, do it. But I think whatever happened in her head, she was like, I think she got them when she was at a different point in her life.
Yeah.
And maybe she had moved to New York and was being kind of a bit anti and a bit, rebellious.
Yeah.
But still, it's like a cool memento of that moment of her life. Not like she ever did anything bad.
Yeah.
But so she might end up getting it back.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
It's the Jep and Jess Show.
Jep and Jess listeners, listen up. Podcast One has a brand new app for you to discover the show all over again. Find out everything about your favorite Podcast One shows, including the Jep and Jess Show, through the all-new Podcast One app, available now in the App Store or on Google Play. Look, you can find articles, social media, make playlists with your favorite episodes, and connect with other Jep and Jess fans. You can even create your own polls and do your own silly and annoying. We have our own little community on there. Check out exclusive content such as behind-the-scenes photos and so much more. And if you have 360 video or watch a bunch of shows in viral reality, there's over 1,000 videos on the app right now. It's like you're in the studio. There is no other podcast app like this. Download the all-new Podcast One app, available now in the App Store or on Google Play.
That's
I think
cool.
we kept you way longer than we said we were.
Oh, I'm happy to be here.
Well, we've appreciated it. Like, I mean, it's
dude.
fun, always fun to talk. And
tell us what's new. What's your first start filming again?
We are, yeah. So we, today being the end of my summer, essentially, we finished season 12 on April 26th-ish. Mm-hmm. We start season 13. We start filming on Wednesday in 4 days. So this morning I hopped down on the treadmill, tried not to wake up your kids, and read through the scripts again and fly out on Monday. Yeah. Taking the family up for a little bit. Tom starts school this year, so it's going to be an interesting season. This is going to be the first season, season 13. It's been pretty easy it was obviously super easy to travel when I was 22 and didn't have a wife or kids and could kind of just hop on a plane and be tired and deal with it with some coffee. And then it got a little more difficult when you're married because you're like, well, I made a commitment to somebody, so I'm not going to just stick around or I'm not going to fly away from them. And then you have kids. It becomes more difficult because now you're trucking along kids and kid stuff, and actually got into a fist fight in the Seattle airport jetway, which we'll get into next time I come join y'all's podcast. Long story short, it's been getting gradually more and more difficult to travel. And now with our third child, it's going to be more difficult still. And, you're thinking about, we got to make sure, because our baby is only 3 months old, almost 4 on the July 17th months old. So you're thinking of like how much breast milk to take, and should we freeze some and try and hold it in some ice, or should we warm it up now so we can feed on the way up or on the way down? And do we have enough blankets for the kid? And our 3 and 5-year-old are potty trained, but what if there's an accident? Do we need to change it? You all know what it is. Y'all have 5 kids. I'm not preaching to the choir. But it's going to be more difficult this year because Tom's going to be in school here in Austin. School, not daycare. So I'm a little, I'm more